Hello, we're exploring a new gate. Today we have gate 53, the gate of beginnings. And in the first line, we find accumulation. So the first line of the human experiential way, the line that dictates the nature of our first step in human experience, is called accumulation. And there's a sense to that, really, because in the beginning, there was the need to have. We are living organisms, and as such, we have many needs: food, shelter, clothing, companionship. When we look at the exaltation, it is grounded in Neptune, or fixed in Neptune, and Neptune veils things from our experience and makes them a bit fuzzy. And so that tells us that our beginnings can be a bit fuzzy sometimes. And that's the experience that we're going to have, whether it's ideal or not. You might say, oh, I don't want my beginnings to be fuzzy, but this is the energy that Neptune brings. And the exaltation says the dissolution of old forms, but not at the expense of valued components that will be retained and transformed. The pressure to begin something new, not from scratch, but based on the foundation of the old. And this is the most important thing about human experience. There's no way that you can just start fresh. There is a continuum, always. Everything comes out of something. This is evolution. So the essence of development is that if you can start something and finish it, then the next thing you start will have even greater power to be able to go through that process of completion, of maturation. That leads to the ability to go through the experiential path and truly be of value to humanity. Going through that experience from beginning to middle to end, so that we can understand the nature of that experience later, so that it can be made sense of later and can be shared with all of us and enrich our experience. In the detriment, we have development hampered by criticism and the tendency to withdraw rather than to make use of experiences. The difficulty in starting something new because of criticism that accompanied the old. So everything about being able to start something new means that you have to have been able to finish something. This is one of the most important things for abstract beings. Yes, they're going to flitter and move and jump and leap and all of this, all of their lives. But if they don't do 35 things at once, if they do this one thing and they go through it as a complete process, then they gain clear value from the experience. And when you think about it, we often will say that somebody multitasks, and this might be very much true for a manifesting generator, where it's possible to have lots of things, and for them healthy to have lots of things on the go at one time. You still actually only do one thing at a time. Oh, it's that. Anyway, it's something I read once. I think it was a non-duality thing that I read once, that you can have lots of things, and we all do. And if you think about all the stuff that we have going on in our lives, we still only have one thing at a time, even if it's just a second doing it here and then moving on to something else. If you get yourself a job, and instead of going through the process of really finishing what you start, then you jump out in the middle, you will be followed by an aura, by a wave of criticism, and you will carry that with you to your next job. And because you're carrying that energy with you, you are beginning again. You're back to square one, if you like. You have not developed out of that process. You've got nothing to build on. There's no foundation for you to build on in your experiential journey. This is the essence of what this hexagram is all about. So are you mature or immature? And there's not a judgment here. They're just two words that are polarized. But maturity lies in beginning and completing, and the immaturity lies in beginning and jumping out, beginning and jumping out. The whole abstract field is made up of this dichotomy. And of course, it might be absolutely correct for you to start and not complete. If you've entered into that correctly, then it's fine. If you are checking in with your authority, is it time to leave this? And your authority says yes, then it's fine. But it's when it's ruled by the mind that you go in and either you get bored or something doesn't work, and then you jump, and then you jump, and then you jump. Then you're going to have this aura of criticism that's going to follow you around. So it always comes back to strategy and authority. How you enter into something is how you stay in it. How you leave something is also really crucial. So when we're looking at the abstract process, it's worth bearing in mind that you don't know anything until the experience is over. While you're still in the process, or whatever it is, you will not figure it out at all, because the abstract is not there to be in the moment. It's there to move through the experience and then reflect on the past. This is what abstract is. So the human way is to go through the experience and explain it later. It's what ultimately creates literature and storytelling. Each time you accomplish something, each time you complete something, you gain power, because you gain the awareness that comes after the experience is over, and the knowledge is then accumulated. This is our accumulation. Ra told us that usually you have two kinds of beginnings. You have the new beginning after something has been completed, and that is a maturation process. That's a progression. And you have new things that begin after you've stepped out of something before it has finished. And this is likely to lead to difficulties because the resource, the maturation process, is not being fulfilled. So the first line of accumulation, it speaks specifically to this. So it is more about that accumulation of the experience of the beginnings, middles, and endings, rather than accumulation of, let's say, gate 14, which is possession in great measure, where we have the cart piled high with material goods. This is really about that experience of completing something, beginning it correctly, and then leaving it correctly. And as much as leaving it, and Ra talks a lot about completion, that completion, as I said, can just be that point you get to where your authority says, okay, we're done with this now. And that's completion. We don't necessarily have to, sort of spend our whole lives in a job because that's the completion process, because that's not what it's about. So sometimes we have to just change our perception of the boxes that we put ourselves into. And completion, as I say, can just be getting to that point where we meet a 42 and we hand it over. And for us, the beginning of it is complete. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to do the whole, whatever it is. It's an interesting thing that we put ourselves through, that I've started this, so I finish. And we had, what was that? It was Mastermind, wasn't it? That television program where the buzzer would go off. I've started, so I'll finish. But what does finishing actually mean? It's quite an interesting question sometimes. I know, obviously, there are some tasks that it is obviously a completion process. But for other things, not so much. For other things, it is possible to pass it over. My part in it is complete. I suppose that's one way of looking at it, isn't it? It's like my part in this is done, and it's time to do something else. So the moon, no, not the moon, we haven't got there yet, the earth. The earth grounding, gate 53, is in gate 54, the marrying maiden, this gate of ambition, the tribal gate. And in the first line, we have influence. So if you're going to start something new and something that will ultimately make its way into the collective experience, because you're entering into it correctly, of course, that experience could be said to have influence. And sometimes I wonder if we consider the fact that our actions can have a profound effect on others, a real deep influence. And I wonder sometimes if we do some of the things that we do, if we did consider the influence or the impact that we have. It's that thing of the butterfly flutters its wings in Paris, and there's a hurricane in South America. Mercury is moving into gate 33 at 4:55. This is the gate of privacy, the gate of retreat. It's the gift to express wisdom through the throat gate. It's wisdom that's gathered from experience. There's a strong need for privacy. Privacy brings that time to contemplate and ponder the lessons that have been learned and the secrets that have been told. And so this is, as you can tell from the language, it's part of the same circuitry as gate 53. You know, we've been through all of the experiences. This is where we start it in gate 53. And then it moves through the human experiential way. It goes right up to the top end. There's some confusion here that has to be rationalized, and ideas and storytelling come after that. Reflection can come through the privacy and the reflection there. So it's all part of that same cycle. I've noticed that sometimes when Mercury is transiting this gate, that there can be a revelation in the gossip magazines or in social media. You know, some secret that has been told makes its way out into the open. Have you ever noticed this? So the moon is still in gate 53, just for a little while longer. And then it moves into gate 62 at 11:40. And this is the preponderance of the small. This is the gate of details, the gate of naming things. And it's a throat gate. An ability to easily grasp patterns and a gift to patiently assemble, organize, and express the details of any situation or structure. And it comes in the form of a logical answer or theory. So without the support of gate 17, which is opposite it in the channel, then there can be a difficulty putting theories into context. And so you might end up overwhelming other people with too much detail, inessential detail, and endless data. Or you could go the other way and not give people enough. So on one side, they're overwhelmed, and on the other side, distinctly underwhelmed, and maybe lose confidence in you because you're not giving them enough information. Gate 56 at 22:07. This is the gate of stimulation. This is the storyteller, the wanderer. Again, it's a throat gate and it's collective, this time on the abstract side. So the 62 and the 56 are mirrors of each other. It's that fold the paper in half and they'd be together there. So here we find stability through movement and the perpetuation of continuity through the linking of short-term activities. It's constantly on the lookout for stimulation, and it likes to weave experience into stories. It's not about facts, it's not about proof, it's about perceptions and feelings. And there is the talent to spin colourful tapestries with which to inspire and teach others. By invitation, this is a projector gate. And then finally we move into gate 31, 8:41 tomorrow morning. And this is the gate of influence. It's a logical throat gate, and it can communicate a vision, a new direction, showing others how to move toward it for a more secure future. It's in a leadership channel, you might have guessed, but it still needs invitation because it's still a projector gate. So an invitation to lead correctly. This is the elected leader rather than the dictator or the inheritor. So this is our transit for today as we start this new gate. Thank you very much for joining me, for listening, for watching. And I look forward to any reflections that you have to make on gate 53. And until I see you tomorrow for a second line day, go gently.